Welcome to Mum's Work and Chaos with me, Louise. They say it takes a village to raise a child, so let me help you build yours. During this journey, I'll be learning about everything from neurodiversity in children's literature through to body image post-pregnancy. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to season 4 of Mum's Work and Chaos. I can't quite believe that we're here. We're not even a year old yet. We're on season 4. But I am really excited this week to be joined by the wonderful Hannah Love, otherwise known as Sleep Well with Hannah on Instagram. She is a sleep expert, but a holistic one. She has incredible knowledge from years of working with children and being trained in children. But I will let Hannah introduce herself. Hannah, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so that's what I do now, is mainly help parents with sleep. But my background is actually in paediatric nursing. So I qualified from King's College University in London in 2000 as a children's nurse. And I mainly worked in accident emergency setting as a nurse. I then went on to study 3 years nutritional therapy after I'd qualified, and 2 years craniosacral therapy as well. And then I spent my 20s, I got an amazing job for professional golfers and ended up spending around 7 years traveling first class private jet to all different corners of the world as a nanny for all different professional golfers, which was amazing. And it was actually then that I started helping babies with sleep. Obviously, all of the babies that were in my care and toddlers that were in my care needed to sleep well, and they needed to sleep wherever we were in the world. And I couldn't do any kind of controlled crying, because a lot of the time we were in hotel rooms. Dad was in the next room with a £1 million round of golf the next day, and I couldn't be leaving the baby to cry out. So I formulated my own gentle techniques to help these babies sleep well. They all of the toddlers, all as young as kind of 18 months, had to have boundaries. They were on the golf course with Dad, and they couldn't just go running onto the golf course when he was in the middle of playing. So again, I formulated gentle and kind and responsive techniques to help these babies eat, feed and sleep well, and kind of naturally kind of built that up. When I got my feet firmly on the ground in the UK, I got a job as the principal paediatric nutritional therapist at the National Nutrition Clinic in London. And it was there that I started meeting parents with lots of different feeding issues, fussy eating, food refusal, nocturnal feeding, failure to thrive, all of these kind of things. And every single one of those children, especially the younger ones, had some kind of sleeping element to their feeding issues. And that's where we put the sleeping and feeding together. And I soon became quite a sought after sleep expert. I didn't plan to do that. It was just something because everybody that was coming to me for other issues, for first aid training, for weaning consultations, for feeding issues, they were like, "Oh my God, you've been a nanny. Can I talk about sleep?" and back then, this is back in around 2005, there really wasn't any sleep experts out there. You Googled, and I did Google. About 2007, sleep experts, and there wasn't anybody doing it. There was Super Nanny, that was about as close as you came to sleep experts, but really on the internet or anything there wasn't. And it was really underrepresented, and you could get help from your health visitor if you're really struggling, but really that was a worksheet on controlled crying. That was about as far as it went. And these mums were desperate, and I offered them a gentle solution to their baby's sleep. And for the next 15 years, I had my first baby in 2008, Oliver, who's now 15, coming up 16. And all through having my other 2 babies in 2012, 2015, I built up a one-to-one business. I didn't really ever advertise, and I got to the point where I couldn't take on any more clients. And it all just grew organically. It really wasn't something that I started out to do, but it was something that I found that I did well and people really needed. So it just organically grew.
It's such a difficult thing. Like, you go from, as a new parent, you go from being able to sleep whenever you want. Well, I say that. Prior to being pregnant, you go from being able to sleep whenever you want to then this, land of sleep deprivation. And I think it's very obvious why it's used as a torture technique because it's incredibly difficult to navigate your way through a work day when you've had like 4 or 5 hours sleep on the reg. And I mean, I know this still applies to me. So I also have 3 children, but mine are 7, nearly 8, 3, nearly 4, and one's just turned 2. And the 2-year-old and the 3-year-old share a bedroom. The 2-year-old's just moved into her big girl bed. And it's just like a permanent sleepover in that room at the moment. And so they're struggling to get them to sleep, even with staggered sleep starts, which is, even, fun anyway. Um, and then they just nattering away to each other, having a nice old jolly time, running around their bedroom, and then I end up having to play sentry duty and telling them to go back to bed.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, I've got like barely any evening to do anything. um, or the youngest is up in the night, and it's fun. I know the reasons why. I know part of the problem is that they're sharing a bedroom. I also know part of the problem is that they have tea at nursery, and then get hungry just before bed. And so I'm trying to work out, is it they won't eat their dinner? Is there any point in me feeding them dinner? And should I just feed them like a snack before bed and encourage them to eat a bit later before I put them to sleep? And I know food is like 90% of the problem. But it's that funny state, isn't it, where you think that. I think a lot of these cry it out sleep therapists online make you believe that sleep is sleep and everything else has nothing to do with it, and that's really not it at all. Like, the danger nap truly exists, and and food is such an important thing, as well as routine. But it's just a tricky landscape to navigate on your own, isn't it? I mean, this is.
Absolutely. And there's so many factors with sleep. I mean, you just mentioned a number of them there with kind of eating and feeding and routine and a very, very typical scenario that a lot of parents have that have got children in childcare that are having an early tea. They have their kind of whatever it is, their sandwich or their beans on toast or cracker breads and
Yeah.
cheese or
Half
whatever around
past 4.
3:30 or 4 comes up. And then it's like they're not hungry enough for their tea when they get in, but actually they need something before bed. And I normally advise something like avocado or some scrambled egg on toast
Mm,
or some cereal or some porridge or with some banana and nut butter, that kind of thing, closer to bedtime. With children that are having their meals at nursery, that normally works quite well.
yeah,
But you have to look at the whole picture. And I think that's the issue, that people that are trying to help parents with sleep aren't qualified in all areas. And that's even with the most basic of sleep issues. You have to look at when they're feeding, kind of that maybe they've got some overnight feeds that you need to address, having a look at their general routine, making sure that you've got time in the daytime to practice their naps when they're not hungry, making sure they're tired around the times that they're not hungry. So you've got that even with the most basic. But then because of my background in nursing and nutrition, I also get a lot more complex cases where you've got a baby that's been struggling with reflux or colic or cow's milk protein allergy.
yeah,
And if you just ignore all of those things, or you're not qualified to look at those things, then you're not going to be able to resolve the sleep issues. And unfortunately, the way the NHS is set up, and I've worked in there for many years, is that if you've got a baby that and these are a typical scenario of a family that contacts me that's got a history of colic, and they've then been diagnosed with reflux, they've been put on reflux meds, the parents have got used to sleeping with them upright, they've been
yeah,
told to feed them little and often in order to help with the reflux, and suddenly you've got this 9-month-old that's only sleeps upright on you, they're feeding 5 or 10 times a night, they're not weaning well in the daytime, they're not taking any solids on board, they're not sleeping, and they're seeing all different people for different things. So they're seeing a sleep specialist that isn't qualified in anything else, that's just looking at sleep. They're seeing a dietitian that's only looking at diet. They're seeing a pediatrician that's only looking at the medicine, and nobody's looking at the whole baby. And
yeah,
that's where I'm in. So I can look at the whole baby. I can kind of have a look and say, right, okay, in order to get the baby eating well, then we need to reduce these nighttime feeds. In order to get them sleeping well, we need to take milk away from when they want to be lying down. In order to get them weaning well, we need to be doing this, and have a look at the whole picture, which is why it works.
yeah. I mean, like, every child is different, and that's insanely true. Like, there's only 19 months between my middle and my youngest, and they have such different sleeping patterns, and different issues when it comes to sleep as well. Like my eldest was exclusively breastfed. She wouldn't take a bottle. God knows I tried. I even imported a bottle that looked like a boob from New Zealand, and she still wouldn't take the bottle. She wouldn't take dummies either. You put them in, they'd be halfway across the living room before you knew it, because she could spit them out at an incredible rate. My middle one, so she had posterior tongue tie. My middle one had posterior tongue tie, or still has, you know, because it was never as properly resolved. But that stopped her breastfeeding properly, and so feeding was hurt. She wouldn't drain the boob properly, so that meant I got you know, I'd have to pump, because otherwise I'd get engorged and it hurt. And also she'd take breaths while feeding. Colic. So I even had several people tell me that breastfed babies don't get colic. That's a lie. And then the youngest also has posterior tongue tie, also never dealt with properly. However, she took to a bottle really easily. I still fed her for the first 6 months. But then she moved over to a bottle. She took dummies. She even gave the dummies up really easily. She has been my best sleeper. You'd literally put her down in her cot with a bottle, saying night night, see you in the morning. She was gone. But then she'd still wake up about 2-3 o'clock in the morning wanting a top up on her bottle. And so between her, the middle one who wakes up in the middle of the night needing a wee, and my eldest who just sleeps through and is amazing now, but she was the worst sleeper as a baby. There's still ups and downs in the night for me, which is fun. But I mean, like, you know, we get there and we're moving, but I wish I'd have had that help with my first one. Because, you know, we got to that stage where we moved her from our room to her cot, and then especially when she turned 1 year old and I had to get her off the boob because I started working again, it meant having to physically rock her to sleep. And that was really difficult. I couldn't just put her down and she'd self-soothe. I'd have to rock her to sleep, which again meant getting up in the night to sort her out when she stirred and everything as well. But it's like, you know, I really honestly wish I'd have had that help, you know.
Well, I think that's the issue. I think that all too often when parents are in a situation where they have to feed to sleep, or they have to rock to sleep, or the baby's relying on milk, breast or bottle to go to sleep, or rocking, that parents are told that the only solution is either continue with what you're doing and that you've got the kind of more gentle parenting camp who are saying co-sleeping's fine and feeding to sleep and all of this. And yeah, absolutely. I'm not here to tell parents what they should or shouldn't do as a parent. And that works perfectly for so many people. But for a lot of people, you either come to the point where it doesn't work anymore. You've gone back to work. You want your bed back. You want your husband back in your bed. You don't want to have to wake up 10 times a night to feed your baby back to sleep. Or it's just physically not working for you because you're so exhausted you can't continue. And then people either think that they either have to continue in that situation, or they've got to put their baby in their cot and leave them to cry it out. And neither of those extremes are feasible a lot of the time. Parents are like, I can't go from one extreme to the other. But what parents don't realise is there is a happy medium, and that's what I've offered, and that's what I've found 20 odd years ago, that 25 years ago, that you can teach a baby to sleep well in a kind and gentle way. You don't have to going from feeding your baby and rocking them to leaving a baby in a cot and crying it out is like going from the 4th floor of a house to the bottom by jumping out the window. It's going to be painful, and it's going to be much harder for everybody involved. Whereas if you take the stairs and go down and do little steps in order to reach that aim, yeah, it's going to take a little bit longer, but it's going to be much more kinder on everyone. So with my program, I just do little steps. So at each step, you're doing a little bit more, less to help your baby, and they're doing a little bit more to help themselves. So there's no jumping from where you are now to cot settling. There's not even jumping from feeding to putting them in the cot and helping them in the cot like any kind of shush pat. You're just doing really gentle steps in order to reach that aim. And that means that it's much more manageable for parents that are doing it. And it means that it works so that parents can continue, they feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, we co-slept with my eldest until she was about a year because she was breastfed and she woke up in the night and it was just easier. But we tried sleep training with her when we weaned her off the breast, and I cried. I couldn't do it. My heart broke. And although I'm a rational human being, I just couldn't reconcile my child crying, and I just felt that it was a traumatic experience for both of us, and I just thought, no, can't do it. Even my husband, who's quite like say it as you see it, was like, no, we can't do this, we can't do it. Like, she's crying too much. No. But it was too hard for all of us, and I just couldn't do it. So we didn't. We did it much more gently. Unfortunately, we had to rock her to sleep, but that was just the way we reconciled it. We were just like, no, this is the best way for us, even though it's painful, we'll get there in the end. And we did. And even when she was about 3, she most nights she'd sleep in her own bed, but sometimes she'd climb in with us, which was fine. But when I was pregnant with my middle one, I said to her, look, you're a big girl now, there's not enough room in the bed for all of us because there's baby too now, bump gets in the way. So we're gonna have to you're gonna have to stay in your bed. Now, I'm happy to sit here and hold your hand until we go to sleep, but we're staying in our bed. And she was like, okay. And then when Indy, a couple of weeks before Indy arrived, I explained to her that we had to stop holding hands now because like soon baby would be here and it'd be too much to have baby and hold hand. It was going to be too difficult. And she was fine with that. She was
Well,
able to.
that's the key, especially with older children. What you've done there is exactly what I would advise, is you've been firm, you've told them the next steps, you've prepared them for it. And then when you've done it, you've been consistent with that change. And that's all that little ones need in order to adapt, which
Yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like we try and communicate quite a lot in our house. Like my oldest has just been diagnosed with ADHD as well, so she likes to know the next steps. So even when we're getting ready in the morning, she has her like routine of things to do. But if we're going out somewhere, she likes to know like, okay, we're going to get in the car and then we're going to go here. Yeah. Are we doing anything else after, or are we just going home? No, we're going to do something after. But and so like but that's just the way we've always communicated. I never saw it as a she has ADHD, this is how we're doing it. We've just always done it that way. And I just think that sort of like clear communication really helped. And then when we put my youngest is called Hannah. When we put Hannah in her new bed, which was Indy's old bed, we built Indy a canopy bed, so she's high up, she thinks it's a bunk bed and she's having a great time. Indy was actually not jealous of giving her bed to Hannah at all. She was really pleased to give it to her because she saw it as like giving a present, you know.
Yeah.
And so that was really lovely. So Indy's not been jealous of Hannah having her bed. She's got a brand new bed as far as she's concerned, even though it was Us's old one. um, but Indy's actually settled into her new bed so well, and she's not woken up in the last 2 weeks since she's been in this brand new big
Lovely.
girl high up bed. And Hannah loves her new bed, but she still, gets a little bit agitated in the night. And I don't know whether that's because she's like done a wee, or whether, and it's just woken her up, or whether she's, still hungry. But she's sometimes the best when it comes to eating dinner after nursery, and sometimes the worst. And we try and get updates when we pick them up, did they eat much, were they okay, kind of thing. But it's sometimes so difficult when you're running out the door to know. And we sort of have a policy in our house that you eat until you're full.
Yeah.
Because we've tried the whole timers and all sorts of my eldest, because she's the worst eater and the fussiest as well. And so instead of like putting more pressure on her to eat, we took that pressure away and we just said, right, you eat until you're full. And
Right.
if you disappear while you're eating, the food gets cleared away and you know, we just assume that you've eaten as much as you want. If you come to me in 10 minutes and you're still hungry, you've clearly not finished your dinner. And they're like, right, okay. um, so but I think sometimes they feel that eating till we're full means we get dessert. Which is really what they're angling for. But yeah, but you know, we tried it all. We've tried all the timers, all the pressurizedness, and it just made dinner time so much worse. And so, you know, by implementing the eat until you're full, if you come to me later and you're still hungry, that's on you, kind of thing, they're a bit more receptive to it. And
my youngest is a bit like that. He's a proper snacker, and I just say, look, you don't have to finish your dinner, but I'll put it on the side, and if you come and ask me in half an hour, then you've got your dinner back. You're not getting anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. No pressure.
They know that dinner's the only option in our house.
Otherwise, it'd be in the snack cupboard asking for a cereal bar and a bag of crisps 5 minutes after dinner.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, we had to move all the snacks up because my youngest got really into Monster Munch, and that was all she wanted.
Who isn't into Monster Munch? I know. Monster Munch.
It's so funny watching like this 1-year-old running around with, you know, pickled onion Monster Munch. and she was proper crafty with how she did it as well. She'd open the cupboard, she'd get them out, and then she'd go to her big sister and ask her to open the packet for her so that I wouldn't know. And next thing you know, I'm like, look down, and there's Hannah sitting there eating a packet of Monster Munch. I was like, oh my god, no one's gonna want their dinner. But yeah, it's just fun, isn't it? I have had a question through from one of my listeners who's really struggling at the moment, and I wondered if we might be able to.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, go ahead.
So her baby's 8 months old, and this sounds like a really similar situation to me and my eldest. 8 months old, exclusively breastfed, but is on solids now and eats 3 meals a day. Really won't take a bottle or a dummy, and will only be fed or rocked to sleep. He can't self-soothe or link sleep cycles, so wakes every 1, 2, or 3 hours through the night, and needs to feed or be picked up to go back into a deep sleep. He's currently co-sleeping with us and feeding 4 to 6 times through the night. We need to move away from this. How do we teach him to settle in his cot and self-soothe, to link cycles without doing the hardcore sleep training? Oh, that's a big question.
I mean, it's literally one of the most common situations that I get contacted with. One of the most common ages, parents are looking to go back to work at 10, 12 months, and they think, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to physically do this when I go back to work. Feeding to sleep is extremely convenient when your baby's little, but obviously as they get older, and you expect to be up 5 times a night even for a small baby when they're needing to feed through the night. As babies get older, the amount of food that they have, amount of milk that they have overnight should reduce. So if your baby was having 1 or 2 night feeds at 3 months old, and they're having 5 or 6 night feeds at 7 or 8 months old, then you know that they don't need those night feeds. These are feeds that they're having because they're waking up, they want the comfort, they need it to go back to sleep, and they don't need to be having them. There are some babies that are struggling with weight gain that still need feeds up until a year, even 18 months old, and that's absolutely fine, but not 6 feeds in the night. But what you can't do, which is what some health visitors and non-trained sleep specialist advise, is like, right, they're 8 months old, they don't need those night feeds, just cut them down, just go down to 1 feed, because babies are so very good at maintaining their calorie intake. They know what they need in 24 hours. That's why when you get your baby's book and you plot their weight, unless there's something wrong, they pretty much follow that curve. And if you think, I don't know any adult that could follow a perfect curve with their weight just like that, but babies do. And so if they are taking 400 mils of milk, for example, overnight, obviously with a breastfed baby you don't know, but bottle fed it's more obvious to see, then they will be taking their 400 less calories or whatever it is that they're taking in the daytime. So normally, typically what you'll find in a baby that's feeding more overnight is they'll be more distracted on daytime feeds. They'll be more distracted when they're feeding. They won't be taking as many calories from food. They might be more picky with the foods they're having in the daytime. They'll be more fussy with foods. Maybe they only like their sweet purees, or they only like their particular foods in the daytime. And so you can't just say, right, let's eliminate these nighttime feeds, because they will be hungry. And then that's when you get this massive crying and the kind of like the really bad protests in the night. What I always advise doing is starting with the daytime. So what we need to do first is we need to have a look at the daytimes, how babies settling for naps and daytime. We need to teach them another way to go to sleep, to take away, so that you've got a tool in your belt overnight. It does sound like this family can do a rocking or a holding to go to sleep in the night. Only once we've got the daytimes looked at, I would also advise on calories in the daytime, advise on foods that are going to give lots of calories in a very small portion, because this baby is taking their calories in, assuming, around 12 breastfeeds in a day and 3 meals. So that's 15 times in a day this baby's having little and often calories. So what they're not going to be able to do is take on a whole big bowl of vegetables and chicken in order to compensate for those calories. So things like avocado and egg yolk, dairy, coconut cream, nut butters, things like that, they only need a small teaspoon of to get the same calories as a big bowl of fruit, for example. And then we can then slowly start to reduce down the nighttime feeds, using another technique, cuddling, rocking, co-sleeping, in order to do them. And only once you've got the nighttime feeds eliminated, then you can go through the sleep training. So you can see there's kind of little stages that you're doing at each time to reach the end goal. I'm actually starting every January, I do a big free sleep workshop for families, and that's exactly what I'm going to be going through. Everybody's in there. I've got 2,500 people registered this time, and the communities are open, and everybody's introducing themselves, and everyone's like, oh my god, this is me, I could have written this, and everyone's got the same issues, and it's the same time. Everyone's like, I thought I was the only person. And that's why the internet is fantastic. People are much more comfortable about sharing, about talking about it, about which is so different to when I started. I said earlier, there wasn't really any sleep specialist around. And the difference was, back in 2008, is when I helped parents, they would do a testimonial for me, but they're like, can I change my name, please? Because they felt almost ashamed of like needing help, because there wasn't really people out there saying openly, I can't do this. Whereas now it's fantastic, because everyone's like, right, I'm struggling, where do I go for help? Which is a bit of a double-edged sword, because it's great that people are talking about it like we are now, but also it means that there's so much information out there that parents just get confused as to what to follow, which is why I offer these free workshops, so that I can show them a consistent approach, because the try everything approach to sleep never works. The try everything approach to anything doesn't work. You mentioned earlier about getting your baby to take a bottle, and you said you tried all different types of bottles, and you even imported one from New Zealand. And I do a bottle course. I've got a course which basically teaches you how to get a baby from the breast onto a bottle.
Oh my god.
And
why did I not find you before?
it's only like £15, but it basically teaches you through the steps. And the biggest thing is consistently choose the same bottle at the same time of day, with the same person, with the same temperature milk, and literally you do that exactly.
So simple.
And it works. And it's the same with sleep. You need to choose one approach. In the start of my sleep workshop, I always do a typical scenario, and everybody's on there and they're like, my God, this is me. Yes, this is me. Yes, this is me. I say, when parents decide to change their sleep situation, they fall into the try everything. So they think, right, I'm not going to feed my baby. And they first of all try a bit of bouncing, then they try a bit of rocking, and then they do a little bit of shush pat, and then they do a bit of pick up, put down. And none of these things work. So they end up putting the baby down, doing a little bit of try it out. Of course, that's not going to work. So they end up going back to feeding. And that try everything approach doesn't work, because your baby's never going to be able to learn a new thing when you're not consistent. No.
Yeah, there's no consistency. And do you know what's really funny is that my actual day job is in marketing. And one of my specialisms is branding. And one of my key catchphrases is consistency is key. And probably
yeah,
I had my own advice right there, and I didn't even use it. But I think, like, when I had my oldest, we tried giving her a bottle like a couple of times, and I pumped loads. But I hadn't planned on going back to work until she was 9 months. And so we didn't really start trying it until just before I went back to work, and which was like the worst. And then also my mum was helping look after her while I was at work, but then it was me and my husband trying it, and then we just handled the stuff, which wasn't going to work because again that consistency of person and the way we were doing it and trying it wasn't there. And
The
then
second rule of getting a baby to do anything is being relaxed about it. And of course, there you
you're
go.
now in mild panic stage when you're about to go back to work, aren't you? And then
Exactly.
but then with my middle one, she was born during lockdown, so we were all at home.
Yeah.
Mum was in our bubble. She had consistency of people and consistency of place and consistency around the way we did stuff. And I think that really, that made so much difference when it came to like sleep and bottles. And also when she went into her room, when we moved her out of our bedroom and into her cot at 6 months, she was with her sister. So again, she wasn't on her own. She had that consistency that there was still someone with her. And so it does make such a difference. And I think it's when you're a new parent and you're navigating sleeplessness and but firstly, listener, I just want to say congratulations on breastfeeding for so long, because like mate, not all of us last that long. I mean, I did only because I had to, because I couldn't see a way out. But some people don't even get the opportunity and want to. Some people, it's not an option for them at all. But like, firstly, well done for sticking with breastfeeding and doing so well with it. Clearly, you're doing great. But equally, I've been in this situation with you. I know how you feel, and I know that I can. She has said that her husband's at working, but he works flexible hours, but she's looking to go back to work now as well, and that's part of her concern, is that she needs this baby to sleep so that she can actually
Oh,
function
100%.
during the day. But like he's 8 months old, you're looking to go back to work, you've got time. It's
Yeah.
just like you've got time to sort this out, and that's great. And she's finished here saying she has signed up to your free masterclass.
Oh, amazing.
So,
Yes.
so
Go
you've
over.
done all the right things to help
Yeah.
there. So amazing that you've signed up. And yeah, but yeah, it's just like that whole holistic approach. Sitting there and just saying sleep is not the way to do it. Like there's so many different things that go into it and can affect sleep, and it's just insane. Like, as I said, 3 kids, all completely different. You're never going to get that consistency from your own genes.
Oh God, no, the same with mine. I mean, they are just, you couldn't get three more different children if you tried. Like Oliver is the most laid back. He slept through the night from when he was 10 weeks old. He was on 4 hourly breastfeeds from birth. He was like, I thought, oh my God, I've cracked this being a parent. And then my other two came along, Ella and Henry. And Henry, my youngest, is like a Duracell bunny. Like he didn't sleep. Sleeping was for wimps, like from the get-go. He had cow's milk protein allergy, he had reflux. He just wanted to be up, running around and moving from when he was tiny. Even when he dropped all of his naps, he only needed like 9.5 hours sleep a night. He's ridiculous. Whereas Oliver was still napping when he started school, because it was 27th of August. So he started like 2 days after his fourth birthday, and he was still napping that summer holiday. So they are just so different. But for the parents that have got a Henry that is not sleeping, that's like a Duracell bunny, that doesn't stop, that is on the go, that tells you exactly what they want. I tell you what, when they get older, Oliver's now 15, and he is beautiful in his personality with being laid back, but my God, it's frustrating. You have to tell him 10 times to do one thing. Every single time he has home economics at school, he forgets his ingredients and I have to run them into school. Whereas
Yeah.
Henry, you ask him to do one thing once and it's done. So
Oh.
there's advantages and disadvantages to both of those personalities.
Crazy, isn't it? Like sometimes I just think, what sort of child would I have if I mixed all three together? Because although my eldest has ADHD, it brings out such amazing things in her. She's so creative. She's so like detailed. You know, she can come up with these amazing storylines and plots, and she writes books all the time. She's just constantly writing and drawing and colouring. And that's where her hyper focus is at the moment, is in that creative area, which is fantastic. And then Indy is like a gymnast meets a parkour specialist meets Tom Cruise doing a stunt for Mission Impossible, and you're just like hiding sofa cushions so she can't lay out a gymnastics floor in the living room. And then Hannah is at the moment is on one and is just Destructo Baby. One of my first reels on my Instagram for Mum's Work in Chaos was of her destroying my kitchen while holding a packet of Monster Munch, funnily enough. But yeah, they're just insane and they're brilliant and they're wonderful in their own special ways. And like Indy's such a risk taker, whereas Usla considers everything and doesn't want to, and that sometimes stops her from doing things. And so sometimes I think just take a little bit from each of you and see what it would build. I think that would be amazing. But one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about today was, obviously you've got your free masterclass, which is open at the moment, and you've got your Facebook community open for that as well. But also you have a book coming out as well, don't you?
I do, yeah. I honestly can't believe it. I mean, when I was at school, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. I wasn't a writer. I've never been somebody that writing comes naturally to.
Yeah.
And everybody said, "Oh, you should write a book." And I thought, no, that's not for me. And then I decided to go for it. About 14 months ago, I met Abigail Horn, who's the Authors and Co. She's got a company called Authors and Co. And basically, she teaches you to go all the way through the steps to write a book. And it's been fantastic. I started in October, not last year, the year before. And I'd written it by August last year, and it is being published next month in February 2024, for those that are watching later on this year. So if you're watching after February 2024, then it's already out there. I'm not allowed to give away the title yet, because it's not yet out. But yeah, obviously, if you searched Hannah Love and Sleep Well with Hannah, then it would come up. But yeah, I'm super excited. It is all about baby sleep.
Yeah.
And it's basically, I've always formulated, it's basically a 6-stage program to get from wherever parents are now to their baby sleeping well. And this is what I've done one-to-one for 15 years. It's what I've focused on in my course for the last 3 years. It's what I do on my sleep clubs. And it takes you all through the preparation. It takes you all through the nutrition, diet, all of those stages. And then also the sleep training in that gradual approach that I was talking about. And then you've got 2 chapters at the end, which are all about moving forward, illness and teething, helping your baby with traveling, routines moving forward. So it really is a comprehensive guide for anybody. And it's also can be a reference guide that you can look back for. What happens when you've got regressions? What if you've got split nights? What if you've got you're going on holiday, you've got to get a baby sleeping elsewhere? So it's got all of those things in it as well. So yeah, I'm really, really excited for it to be released next month.
That's amazing, because I think that's one of the things like we struggle with. Like we haven't been abroad for a long time, like since before, just before lockdown. But with my eldest, we took her to Cyprus. My husband's Turkish Cypriot, so we took her to Cyprus to meet all the family, and see everyone over there. And that was one thing that we really struggled with. It's only a 2-hour time difference, but it made all the difference, because you've got that whole day of traveling, haven't you? So we got up really early for the flight. She slept on the flight, and then trying to get her settled into a new room in the hotel, and they put her in a bed rather than a travel cot with the side on, and she was still in a cot at that point. And so it was all a lot, getting used to, oh, there's a big bed and I'm sleeping in it. Oh, in this new room, and it's hot here and we have air conditioning and, and all this sort of stuff. And then also like she was napping for longer because she'd been in the pool the whole time. And it was just like, oh my God, how do we deal with this? But that all that sort of advice is amazing, because like, you know, when you think about going on holiday, we don't think about having to retrain our child to actually sleep as well.
That's the kind of fundamentals of the my support and advice for parents, because I spent 7 years traveling around the world with the golfers, and as a family we go to 3 or 4 festivals a year. We go camping. Our kids went to their first festival. In fact, my son went to his first festival when he was 3 weeks old.
Wow.
We just come back from a 3 week holiday in Vietnam over Christmas, where the 5 of us flew out to Vietnam, which was
Wow.
7 hours difference. And I think a lot of parents think that in order to have a baby sleeping well, you need this strict routine. They need to be in a darkened room. They need to go in there at 11:07 in the morning, because this kind of Gina Ford type routines. That is not what I'm about. I'm about teaching parents to teach their babies to sleep well, so that they can then experience life, that they don't need to put their life on hold, that they can go to a festival if that's what you want to do. You can go out for dinner, you can go for coffee. You don't need to say, oh, I can't go to that lunch because it's over baby's nap time. Have a baby that naps in the pram. So these are all things that I teach in my book and on my classes, so that, of course, if you're a family that wants to stay at home and you want to do those things, but if you, a lot of parents, I think, almost have, what's the word, when they have a baby, they almost have this kind of, they miss their previous life. They think that everything has to change. And I want to show parents that actually that isn't the case. Like, I went back to work when my babies went, well, actually I went back to work when I was on the way home from C-section, having a C-section, and got told off by Daryl
Been
answering
there,
calls.
done that.
And I didn't have any maternity leave. And as I said, we took the kids to their first festival when Henry was 3 weeks old, and the other two were 2 and 5. And you can do these things if that's what you want to do. You don't have to miss your old life. You can continue doing those things that you enjoy with a baby in tow. And actually, when you do that, your children learn to enjoy the things that you love as well. I've always loved festivals. I went to my first festival when I was a few weeks old as well, so I've always done. And so I was like, right, you lot are going to enjoy festivals, and they do. They love them.
Well, we when we had our first, we were very much of that mindset, like, this isn't going to impact us. We're going to do what we want. And we used to take her out for dinner with us, and we used to go to like places like Miller and Carter, and she used to sit in the high chair, and she ate corn on the cob, and she had a great old time. And they provided colouring, and we just didn't give two hoots the fact that we had a baby in this place. But and she napped in the car. And we just sort of like work out, oh, okay, well, if we're getting in the car at this time, she's going to fall asleep. She'll wake up at this time, so she'll probably go to bed at that time. But she still had the right amount of sleep. And people would say to me, like, oh, but car sleep isn't real sleep. What do you mean car sleep isn't real sleep? Sleep is sleep, you know. And so we'd sort of just like do it, you know. We didn't see a problem in it. But then when we had Indy, because we were in lockdown, we couldn't go anywhere anyway, and so like she learnt to sleep at home, which was fine. But then equally, now she still sleeps in the car, and we time things, and we're just like, okay, well, if we know that she's tired from the night before and she's definitely going to have a nap in the car, we just know she's going to go to bed a bit later. But then we also know that she needs a certain amount to not be a psycho, and so that means like leaving the house slightly later the next day. And so you just work it out, don't you? And I love that. Like, honestly, when people's told me things like that, car sleep isn't real sleep, really bugged me. And sometimes we just like to go for a drive at night, you know, like it would be our time for a download. Before kids, we both worked full time. We both worked different hours in different places that were actually quite far away. And so we used to download our day in the car while house hunting. And so we get home from work, have our tea, and then we search Rightmove, find somewhere we liked. We were renting at the time, and we go for a drive-by, and we just drive around and see like 4 or 5 houses. And then and so sometimes, you know, when the kids are a bit bleh and don't want to go to sleep, we'll just be like, right, pajamas on, get in the car, we'll go for a drive. We'll just go for a download drive. Oh, okay, fine. All right. They all get in the car. They're all happy. And next thing you know,
Yeah.
the back of the car.
Time you got out the road, yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
you know, and then we carry them in and they're in bed and it's fine. But like, I think it's so funny when people say stuff like that. It just makes me giggle because I'm like, no, it worked for me. And that's the thing though, isn't it? It's like these rigid approaches from other people make your parenting more rigid. And sometimes that doesn't work for the parent or the family as a whole. And actually, having a more holistic approach and looking at things and your routines and what you do as an adult human being means that your child's routine doesn't have to dictate your life, because actually the routine is actually quite flexible
All
and can fit
your
around the
children
things you
want,
want to do.
yeah, all your children want is for to have a happy parent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if going out for dinner or going to a festival or going on holiday or having lunch out with your NCT group or going to a family birthday party that isn't going to finish until 9 o'clock at night, if that makes you happy as a parent, then that's also going to make you have happy children.
Yeah.
It's not going to make you have happy children if you're tied to the house because you've got this rigid routine because somebody's told you that your baby has to nap in a cot in order to have proper sleep. It's not going to make you a happy person, and then you're not going to have a happy baby. So the most important thing, and lots of parents say, oh, when you're being selfish, and I've put posts up before on Instagram about you and baby-led parenting, and you need to be baby-led and all of this. It's like, actually, no, like if your baby is going to be happy if you're happy. And also, growing up, and as your children get older, and mine are older now, if you've always put the emphasis on this baby-led and baby-led, then what are you teaching your baby? You want your children to put themselves first. You want them to prioritize self-care. You want them to love themselves and to respect themselves enough to put themselves first.
Yeah.
And if all of the time in their lives they've seen you not prioritize yourself, you be unhappy because you're not doing the things that you love, you put in yourself second, that's not teaching them a good role model, is it? So I really do think it's so important for parents to think, right, this is what I want from life. And yes, of course you embrace and love your children to the moon and back, but it doesn't mean that you have to put your whole life on hold in order to have children. It really doesn't.
Amazing. Well, as we know, your free masterclass, you can apply for that now. The Facebook community for that is open now.
Yeah, absolutely. And once that's closed, I have a Facebook community, Sleep Well with Hannah on Facebook, which has got nearly 10,000 people in it that I support people every day. Obviously, you can find me on Sleep Well with Hannah on Instagram as well. Yeah, I run this free workshop 3 times a year, January, May, and September. And in between that, you can get my support on my book soon. And I've got my courses. I've got lots of parenting courses. I mentioned the breast to bottle, but I've got potty training, toddler behavior, fussy eating, yeah, lots of parenting courses as well, and ones for pregnant parents as well.
Oh, amazing. And yeah, listeners, if if you're listening to this as it comes out on Friday, the website is live, which is amazing. So the Mums Work in Chaos website is brand new. It's live. You'll find information on there about the latest episodes of the podcast, the guests who have been on, and also there is a resources section. If you head to that resources section now, you'll find a whole bunch of information about Hannah. And as soon as her book is launched, we'll have a link to it there as well for you. So you'll be able to just click that link and hopefully just be able to purchase it straight away. So do head over to the Mums Work in Chaos website, which is live now, and head to the resources section. There is a link to Hannah's masterclass, so please do sign up for it there. And I look forward to hearing your feedback on this episode. Let us know what you think, leave a review, and tell your friends.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's been great having you.
If you enjoyed this episode of Mums Work in Chaos, please make sure to subscribe on whatever podcasting channel you're listening on at the moment. Or if you'd like to get involved, feel free to email me at mumsworkandchaos@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at mumsworkandchaos. See you then.